Life was simple out here. Just me, my ranch, and a handful of cows with more manners than any HOA board I ever knew. I didn't need much, just open sky, clean air, and the sound of wind rustling through the grass instead of leaf blowers and passive-aggressive neighbors. After 20 years of dealing with suburban nonsense, I'd had enough. The day I left the HOA neighborhood was the day I started breathing again. My ranch sat on 140 acres of rolling hills and oak groves just outside of town. It was the kind of place where the stars still came out at night, and the only traffic was a herd of cattle crossing the dirt road. I had a red barn that leaned slightly west like it was listening to the wind, a log cabin with a porch perfect for coffee and sunrises, and fences I built with my own hands. This land was my peace, my pride, and my payback for every ridiculous, Joey fine I'd ever received for leaving a trash can out 5 minutes too long. I was living the dream, until the day something felt off. It started with a white envelope taped to my gate. No postage, no return address. Just bold black ink spelling notice of violation. I remember chuckling at first. Thought maybe some punk kid was pulling a prank. But inside was a typed letter, stiff language, legal-sounding nonsense, accusing me of unauthorized architectural modifications and non-compliant livestock enclosure aesthetics. What in the hell did that even mean? I tossed it in the fire pit and didn't think much of it. But then a week later I noticed a black SUV parked just down the road. Same car, 2 days in a row. Someone watching, maybe even taking photos. That uneasy feeling crawled up my spine. The same one I'd had back in the suburbs when the HOA sent their compliance inspector to measure my grass height with a ruler. Only now, I wasn't in some cookie-cutter neighborhood. I was on my own damn land. Something was coming. I could feel it in my gut the same way you smell rain before it hits. And whoever thought they could bring HOA drama to my ranch, they had no idea who they were messing with. It was a Thursday when the snake slithered out of the grass. Not literally. This one wore a navy blue suit and Italian loafers. I spotted him marching up my drive like he owned the place, clipboard in one hand, smug superiority in the other. The SUV was back, parked at the end of the road, and this time he didn't bother being subtle. I was fixing a hinge on my south gate when he arrived. Didn't even bother with a wave. Just strutted up, stopped 10 feet from me and said, "Are you aware that your property is currently in violation of several community ordinances?" I blinked. "Come again." He cleared his throat like he was about to announce the State of the Union. "I'm Arthur Langley, President of the Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association. We've recently expanded our oversight zone, and your land now falls within our jurisdiction. We're here to help facilitate your compliance process." I stared at him for a long second, then laughed. Actually laughed. "Buddy, you must be lost. This is ranch land. Zoning's agricultural. Always has been. I'm not under your HOA, and I sure as hell didn't sign up for it." He didn't flinch. Just adjusted his tie and pulled out a manila folder. "Our legal team has reviewed the maps. The new Cedar Ridge Phase 3 development backs directly up to your northern fence line. According to our interpretation of the bylaws, any adjoining land is subject to transitional compliance, which includes you." "Transitional compliance," I repeated, like I was tasting something foul. "Yes. Which means structures like that," Barney, he pointed with his pen, "need to meet HOA aesthetic standards. You'll also need to register your livestock, update fencing to HOA-approved designs, and submit an architectural request for that shed by the back pasture." Now I wasn't laughing. I stepped closer, close enough to smell his overpriced cologne. "You listen here, Arthur. I don't know what scam you're running, but this ranch doesn't fall under your kingdom of stucco boxes and lawn regulations. I've got my deed, my land, my rules, and if you come back here again without an invitation, you'll be leaving escorted." He backed up half a step, flicked a bug off his sleeve, then gave me this polite, condescending smile. "I'm just here to help you avoid significant penalties. You'll be hearing from us soon." "Can't wait," I said and slammed the gate between us. He walked back to his SUV like he'd just planted a flag. And me? I stood there watching the dust trail disappear, already knowing this wasn't over. These HOA types didn't like being told no. They thrived on control, on turning freedom into a checklist. And for some reason, Arthur Langley had set his eyes on my ranch like it was the last unpainted fence on his map. But what he didn't know, he'd just poked a bull that wasn't afraid to charge. It started slow, like a rattlesnake coiling in tall grass. First came the mail. Thick envelopes labeled Official Notice HOA Violation, stamped in red, stuffed in my mailbox every other day. Apparently, I was now being fined for a variety of absurdities. Fence coloration incompatible with community aesthetic standards, non-conforming mailbox design, unauthorized livestock containment zone. That last one really ticked me off. They were talking about my cattle pen, built by my father and me 10 years ago. Solid oak, held through storms and droughts. But no, according to them, it wasn't visually aligned with Cedar Ridge Phase 3 visual harmony protocols, whatever the hell that meant. I ignored the notices. Burned most of them, honestly. But they kept coming. Then came the flyers. Left in my gate, taped to my barn, even slipped under the windshield wiper on my truck when I was in town. Bright yellow, big block text. Compliance is mandatory. Refusal will result in escalated actions. Escalated actions, huh? One night around 2 a.m., I caught the sound of a drone buzzing over my pasture. I stepped out with my flashlight and shotgun and watched the thing hover like some kind of robotic hornet. It darted back toward the subdivision, blinking red like it was mocking me. It didn't stop there. I came home from the feed store one afternoon to find my front gate chained shut. Not just locked, chained. Padlocked with a laminated HOA tag hanging from it marked, "Closed pending compliance." They'd actually trespassed onto my property and locked me out of my own land. I had to cut the chain off with bolt cutters, cussing the entire time. I called the sheriff, furious, but all I got was a tired deputy who shrugged and said, "If there's no direct threat and it's not criminal, it's probably a civil matter. You'll have to take it to court." So that's what this was now, a paper war. A slow, grinding siege of notices, fines, threats, and legalese. HOA warfare. All from people who didn't live here, didn't work the land, didn't understand what it meant to pour your soul into every post, every acre. They wanted to break me down, drown me in red tape until I either sold the land or submitted. But what they didn't count on? I wasn't some suburban dad worried about my lawn gnomes. I was a rancher. This land fed me, healed me, built me, and I don't go down easy. I started. Documenting everything, letters, photos, the drone, even that damn chain on my gate. If they wanted to fight, fine. I was ready to go full rodeo. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately sense something's off? Like the air's too still, the silence too heavy? That's what hit me the moment I pulled into the driveway that Saturday afternoon. I'd been gone half the day, just to run into town for feed and supplies. Nothing unusual. But as I rolled up, I noticed the latch on my barn door hanging loose, swinging in the breeze. That latch never swings. It's a solid iron bar with a custom lock I welded myself. The kind of thing you only open with intention, and the key. I parked fast and bolted toward the barn. The second I stepped inside, my stomach dropped. Hay scattered, feed bins tipped over. My tool chest pried open and rummaged through. The ATV I keep inside was moved, rolled out halfway like someone had tried to take it and then changed their mind. My saddle rack was knocked over, and worst of all, Daisy, my old mare, was trembling in her stall, eyes wide with panic. That horse don't spook easy. I stood there in the mess, fists clenched, heart pounding. My first instinct was some local punks, but then I saw the paper, taped to the inside of the barn door. Letterhead, Cedar Ridge HOA, enforcement notice. The message was typed and cold. Due to repeated non-compliance, HOA representatives have exercised administrative oversight and performed a preliminary inspection of the premises. Additional interventions will follow if the property owner refuses to engage with the compliance process. They had the audacity to call it an inspection. No, this was a break-in, a calculated, deliberate invasion of my land. my sanctuary, my barn, and they left it like they were proud of themselves. That was the moment everything changed. Harassment was one thing, but now they'd crossed the line, trespassed, vandalized, terrorized my animals. And they left behind evidence like it was some badge of honor. I walked out, hands shaking, and checked the security cams I had mounted under the eaves. Sure enough, there they were, 3 men and a woman, all in business casual outfits, walking onto my land like they had an appointment. One of them, Arthur Langley, that smug HOA president, actually had the gall to film with his phone as he walked the barn. Another carried a clipboard, making notes. They didn't even try to hide it. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on my porch with a thermos of coffee and my shotgun across my lap, watching the horizon. My mind was racing, not just with rage, but strategy. I needed a way to hit back, not with fists, though God knows. I wanted to, but with something that would leave a bruise they couldn't ignore. The next morning I drove straight into town, parked outside a lawyer's office with a reputation for being meaner than a cornered bobcat. Darla Hewitt, property rights attorney. I'd heard stories. She once made a mining company cry uncle over 5 acres of land. I walked in with a flash, drive full of footage and a folder thick with violation notices. She took one look at it all, sat back in her chair and said, "Oh, honey, they screwed up." Turns out Cedar Ridge HOA had no legal authority past the subdivision. The Phase 3 expansion wasn't even finalized by the county. Their entire foundation for enforcement was built on fake zoning overlays and manipulated maps. "They've trespassed," Darla said, flipping through the photos. "Multiple times. Damaged private property, intimidation, harassment. And that letter? That's the cherry on the liability sundae. We started building the case that day. They wanted a war. They were about to find out what it feels like when a rancher fights back, with the law on his side and a lawyer with teeth. There's a certain kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Not the nervous kind, not the stillness of fear. It's the calm of a man who knows his hands are steady, his ducks are in a row, and the enemy has no idea what's coming. That was me, sitting on my porch 3 days after the break-in, sipping black coffee as the sun cracked over the ridge. The cows moved slow in the field. The world felt peaceful again, on the outside. But inside, I was already knee-deep in plans. Darla didn't waste time. Within 48 hours, she'd filed a restraining order against the Cedar Ridge HOA, citing unlawful trespass, property damage, and animal endangerment. We also filed a cease and desist, legally barring them from stepping so much as a toe on my land. Meanwhile, she was digging through every dusty file in the county office. Zoning documents, plat maps, deed restrictions, the whole web of legal threads the HOA was pretending gave them power. Darla sliced through it like barbed wire with bolt cutters. Turns out their Phase 3 expansion was a mess of paperwork errors, half-signed permits, and backroom deals with developers trying to fast-track approvals by pretending they already had authority. They didn't. Worse for them, their board had acted as if it was already law, sending notices, placing locks, entering private property, all without any formal jurisdiction. And I had it all on camera. While Darla built the case, I got to work on my side, gathering testimonies from nearby ranchers and residents. Turns out I wasn't the only one being harassed. They'd tried, pushing another family off their orchard down the road, tried bullying an old veteran about his tractor shed being visible from the subdivision walking trail. Same pattern. Same arrogance, but nobody had ever pushed back, until now. I wasn't just going to beat them, I was going to drag them into the spotlight, strip their lies bare, and let the whole county see what HOA tyranny looks like when it steps too far. They thought they could fine me into submission. They were about to be fined into oblivion. When we filed the lawsuit, I expected pushback. I expected some slimy lawyer to call Darla, maybe try to settle it all quietly. What I didn't expect was silence. No calls, no letters, not even another fine. For 2 whole weeks, the HOA vanished like cowards into their little cul-de-sac kingdom. I figured they were regrouping, waiting for some legal Hail Mary. What I didn't know, what they didn't know, was that Darla had a bombshell. You see, during her digging, she uncovered a little detail buried deep in the county zoning archives. The HOA's Phase 3 expansion area. It was legally designated as protected mixed agricultural buffer land, zoned specifically to prevent suburban creep into ranch territory. Not only did they not have jurisdiction over my property, they weren't even allowed to build the homes. They were promising, which meant every homeowner who'd bought into Phase 3 thinking they were part of a gated ranch-style community had been scammed. So we took the fight public. Darla called a press conference on the courthouse steps. Local news showed up, mostly out of curiosity. By the time it was over, the headlines were everywhere. Rancher sues HOA over illegal land grab. Subdivision overstepped, trespassed, and lied. Lawsuit alleges. Hidden cameras reveal HOA break-in on private ranch. And just like that, the tide turned. People came out of the woodwork. Residents, ranchers, ex-board members who quit in disgust. All of them sharing stories, offering evidence. A woman from 3 streets over showed us footage of Arthur Langley admitting on camera that they needed to set an example with the rancher. Another sent us internal HOA emails. One even called me a non-compliant eyesore to be dealt with quickly. Their words. On paper, our lawsuit expanded. We added counts of defamation, harassment, illegal surveillance, trespassing, attempted theft, and abuse of regulatory power. And then came the audit. Turns out the HOA had been collecting expansion dues from residents for 2 years to fund Phase 3 enforcement. Over $200,000, with no clear record of where that money went. Darla handed that to the county's fraud unit with a smile on her face. The civil suit became criminal. Arthur Langley tried to play innocent on the news, said I was hostile, and refused to cooperate with community integration efforts. But that fell apart the moment we released the security footage of him inside my barn, smirking as he pointed at my livestock, like he was ordering items off a menu. You could hear the reporters gasp. After that, the HOA board started jumping ship like rats off a burning boat. Resignations flew in, one after the other. The subdivision's developer, some bigwig out of Austin, cut ties with the HOA entirely, claimed they'd been operating outside agreed terms, but it wasn't over yet. See, the county wanted blood too. After seeing the drone footage and learning about the fake compliance notices, they launched their own investigation. They hit the HOA with zoning violations, illegal surveillance charges, and misuse of municipal filings. All told, Darla tallied the damages, legal fees, emotional distress, and property loss. We filed a revised suit for $680,000, and let me tell you, when that hit the docket, the Cedar Ridge HOA folded faster than a dollar store lawn chair. They offered a settlement within 48 hours. We didn't accept. We wanted judgment. We wanted public record. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everybody who'd been bullied, intimidated, and steamrolled by people who think a clipboard and a title give them power over your life. And once this story hit statewide news, there wasn't a homeowner in Texas who didn't hear what happened when a rancher fought back. The courtroom smelled like old paper and pride, polished wood, rows of pew-like benches, a judge with more years on the bench than Arthur Langley had years on this earth. And across the aisle, the entire Cedar Ridge HOA board, what was left of it, lined up like school kids caught cheating during finals. Arthur still wore that smug little smile when he walked in. Designer suit, slicked back hair, looking like he thought he was walking. To a country club disagreement, not a legal beatdown. I wore jeans, boots, and a clean button-down. Respectful but me, the way my father would have wanted. Darla was next to me, sharp as a scalpel and twice as dangerous. "Let's gut 'em," she whispered before the judge called us to order. And gut them we did. The evidence hit like a stampede. Security footage, drone recordings, that bogus lock chained around my gate, every cease and desist notice ignored, every compliance letter printed on official-looking HOA letterhead that held no legal weight whatsoever. Darla laid it out. Like a campfire story for the jury. Simple, gripping, undeniable. "This man," she said, pointing at me, Lives on a ranch that's been in his family for generations. Peaceful life. Protected by agricultural zoning laws and county statutes. He never asked for HOA oversight. He never signed up for it. They forced their way in, made demands, issued illegal fines, trespassed, damaged property, and frightened livestock. All in the name of power. All while collecting fraudulent funds from their residents, and worst of all, they called it justice. Then it was Arthur's lawyer's turn. He was everything you'd expect. Slick, loud, full of excuses. They claimed we were overreacting, that the HOA had a good faith belief they had jurisdiction, that they never meant harm, that community beautification was misunderstood. But Darla, she didn't let a single lie slide. Good faith? She snapped. Let's talk about this footage, taken after they were warned, after cease and desist letters were filed. They knowingly entered my client's property and left a note calling it an inspection. That's not good faith. That's a deliberate violation of civil rights and state property law. The judge didn't blink, but I saw his jaw tighten. Then came the testimonies. Neighbors, nearby ranchers, even a former HOA treasurer who turned whistleblower. She testified that Arthur had used HOA funds for incentive payments to keep board members quiet. The courtroom shifted after that. By the time Darla presented the final damages spreadsheet, detailed to the dollar, listing every cost, from the padlock on my gate to the damage done to my old mare Daisy's nerves, you could hear a pin drop, and then it was Arthur's turn to testify. He took the stand with the arrogance of a man who thought the world owed him something. He started off calm, but the pressure mounted. Every question chipped at him. He tried to smirk, tried to deflect. Then Darla asked the million-dollar question. Mr. Langley, did you at any point believe that the plaintiff had voluntarily joined your HOA? Silence. He hesitated. Then, no. You could feel the entire room lean in. Darla smiled just slightly. So you knew. You knew from the beginning that his ranch wasn't under your authority, and you continued anyway? Arthur blinked, swallowed. We believed it was in the community's best interest. And who gave you the right to decide that? He didn't answer, didn't need to. The damage was done. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Verdict: in favor of the plaintiff. Awarded damages, $680,000 plus court fees, plus a formal injunction preventing Cedar Ridge HOA from engaging with any properties outside their legal boundary ever again. Arthur didn't look smug when he left the courtroom. He looked pale, like a man who'd finally realized you can't bully everyone, and some people bite back harder than you ever imagined. Let this be a warning to all property owners. Unchecked power, especially when wielded by an HOA, can turn your dream home into a battleground. These organizations might try to enforce arbitrary rules, bully you into submission, or tear down everything you've worked for. But don't let them. Know your rights, and never back down when someone tries to take what's rightfully yours. Every day, people like you face this kind of injustice, and it's easy to feel helpless. But as this story shows, sometimes the best revenge is not just standing up for yourself. It's turning the tables and making them regret ever crossing you. If you don't know your rights, you can't defend them. So get informed, get ready, and make sure no one can take your land or your dignity without a fight. The HOA thought they could take my land. Instead, they paid for a new barn, a truck, and a year's supply of feed. Justice doesn't wear a tie. It rides a tractor.